Tell you what, I'm going to stop and start again. Right, well, welcome to this live stream. It's Monday morning. Sorry about that rather poor attempt there where I wasn't getting any sound. My fault entirely. Hopefully people can hear me now. Good. Someone says, so Joe Brown says we hear you. Thank you, Joe, very much. Now, we were talking about these principles in public life, the so-called Nolan principles. And there's been such detailed feedback from this, really quite interesting, that there's things I want to bring out from that, really. Ideas that have come from you. So these were the Nolan principles that we talked about. Accountability and correct procedures for public life. So the public servant, whether is elected or not elected, should be selfless, have integrity, have objectivity, have accountability, have openness, have honesty, and have leadership. And I think it's fair to say that there was quite a bit of disappointment from you on the way our public officials have reacted. Now, I must say I haven't done much science over the weekend. I've been a bit tired, and I've also been watching this, to tell you the truth. This drone situation in New Jersey and other areas is quite interesting. More on that in a minute, and there's certainly lessons to learn from that. But let's look at some of your feedback first of all, because what I feel is the quality. I've had 4,000 or 5,000 feedback comments on the video on openness in public life and the Nolan principles. We call it the banality of evil. After the Adolf Eichmann trial in 1963, where that phrase was first coined, where we have a mild-mannered bureaucrat, or apparently mild-mannered bureaucrat, who was shuffling around trainloads full of people to go to extermination centres. How someone could do that. So that was the reason for the name of the video. But anyway, let's get on to some of your feedback. Because we did say that if someone was to analyse this feedback, and we get some really good qualitative data from it, so I want to bring you some of your feedback. And I've generated a few themes. I haven't done a proper analysis, just a very superficial one. But here we have some of them here. People have noted that similar modalities of control were perceived using different methodologies in different national settings. In other words, when you read through 1,000 of these comments, you see that people feel that they're being controlled and manipulated in different national settings. So the way it's being done in the UK is probably slightly different. The way it's being done in the US is probably slightly different. But the end result seems to be much the same. And if you read the comments, that is coming out. Read them for yourself and see what you think. That's what I felt comes out of the comments. Now, the thing about qualitative research is, of course, there is a subjective component to it. This is what I feel people are saying. And I will be giving some specific examples of what people are saying. So that was one theme. Same methods of manipulation, but using different strategies in different national settings. Illustrations and examples were given on lack of transparency. So again, this feeling that there's a great lack of transparency around the world is a very common theme. Lots of people were saying this. Many commentators referred to specific public situations and individuals. Now, I'm not going to start listing off individuals for whom there's some of you suspect have breached the Nolan principles of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. But the list is long, but distinguished. Very distinguished indeed. If you count distinguished as being famous and in the public eye, which of course we don't. Distinguished should mean a man or woman of great integrity, in my view, but you understand what I mean. So great disappointment there. Now, the other thing that came out, the importance of a spiritual dimension to life. This came out really quite a lot. Now, whether you want to call this a spiritual dimension, Yeah, I think we probably do. It's more than just an ethical dimension. It's more than just it's into the area of morality and external accountability. And a lot of you felt that this was severely lacking in public and national life at the moment. So, importance of the spiritual dimension to life, that theme comes out from the feedback that you have given, I believe. Inappropriate, even corrupt use of taxpayers' money. So we're paying huge amounts of taxes in the UK. In the UK, it's just appalling at the moment, and taxes on many different things. Without going into the party politics of it, people feel that their money is not being used appropriately. This is a common theme that's emerged. That theme is there. Compromise of vested interest in money-making ventures. So many people feel that people in leadership have got conflicts of interest, often related to making money. Or maybe some people are motivated purely by the desire to have power. You know, maybe 1% of the population has psychopathic tendencies. And what do we mean by that? What is a psychopathic tendency? To me, the simplest way to think about a psychopathic personality is a person who uses other people as things. Just things to be manipulated for their own ends. They have no intrinsic value. Whereas if you're watching this video, and with me, I'm sure you believe that people have intrinsic value. Not just for what they can deliver, not just how useful they are. I think that theme came out. I think it's fair to say that theme came out. I do hope this is working. This live link thing is a bit of a... I'm just learning it, so do bear with me. I think YouTube will put it on after for people that are still in bed, which of course is quite understandable if you're if you're in the States or Canada or Australia. In fact, probably pretty well anywhere else apart from the United Kingdom. Anyway, let's get back to your feedback. A theme that came out was lack of trust in international bodies to the point of an inverse relationship. Now, what came out here was people were saying things like, oh, I don't know, pick an international body of your choice and write it down. They were saying I would believe the opposite of what those organisations are saying. I don't think that's the way to go. I think very often when you have a forgery, you know, if you have a forged $10 bill or a £20 note or whatever it is, that forgery can be very accurate in many respects. Otherwise, it wouldn't be credible. And it's just that little thing that's wrong that makes it worthless junk and a complete forgery. So very often, if it were that people are trying to control us and manipulate us for their own nefarious ends, whatever they may be, if that is the case, then most of what they say should be credible to most people most of the time. So rather than saying they say it, therefore it's wrong, I think what we need to do is say, okay, they've said that. Let's evaluate that based on individual evidence for their individual claims. What are the objective criteria behind here? What is the specific evidence that we need to be looking at? Let's judge each claim on its individual merits. Now, of course, it's very difficult when people are controlling the information. If we're not getting the information, as was at the start of the pandemic, for example, there was very little objective information around. It was there, but it was very hard to find. So it's difficult. So sometimes what we have to do is just take it back to fundamental principles. You know, there's fundamental principles in science. There's a scientific method. You know, if someone says for every reaction there's an equal and double or opposite reaction, then that's clearly wrong. It contravenes Newton's third law of motion. You know, for every reaction there's an equal and opposite reaction. Equal and opposite, it's not double. So sometimes we can compare what's being said with fundamental science, but that can be difficult. Sometimes we have to use expert opinion, trusted expert opinion. And of course, one of the things we've done on this channel, we've been immensely privileged to cultivate trusted expert opinion. Men and women of scientific integrity who will give us their opinions based on their lifetime's work in science, who I know do not have conflicts of interest. And again, we've been very privileged to have that. And sometimes we just have to make decisions based on basic ethical moral principles as well. You know, we are biopsychosocial spiritual beings. We're allowed to exercise our own integrity, surely. So, lack of trust in international bodies, it's not the converse of what they say. A lot of what they say will be right, but little bits that are wrong could point to potential disastrous outcomes. Now, some of your comments directly. Now, there are so many. I've just like cut and pasted a few of your comments from the video, the banality of evil. So let's look at some of your comments, and I've tried to do comments that are indicative of the comments as a whole. Now, I haven't put people's names on that because I feel it's unfair. Okay, when people comment, it's in the public domain. But if you look through, you'll see these are just cut and pastes from the comments. But I haven't put people's names on it. I feel it's unfair because they hadn't volunteered specifically to come on a video, although they did put the comment in the public domain. But so I haven't put names. Evil triumphs when good men and women do nothing, of course. This is just so patently true. Someone else says it was always about greed for money, never our health. This is a common theme that comes through. You can disagree with aspects of that if you like. But this idea of extrinsic motivation, you know, in public life we should have the objectivity. And that should be followed by accountability, not by free presidential pardons or potential free presidential pardons. You know, all these principles should be followed at all times, I would have thought. Someone else says, wow, this is absolutely hilarious. Every single one of those principles has been broken completely, is one person's view. I agree, John. I feel immensely let down also. The officials and experts I once admired, I now have no trust in at all. None. Worse, I despise what they have done and continue to. Now, I understand where this comment is coming from, but again, we can't dismiss everything people are saying. We have to look at it really point by point. Because as we've said, in a good forgery, many of the components will be accurate. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to be objective because, apart from many other reasons, objectivity is one of the criteria of public life. So, yeah, interesting comment. No two words terrify. No two words more terrifying than billionaire philanthropist. Who could you possibly be thinking about? I don't know. Another comment. If you're watching this channel and have never watched the first Matrix film, don't bother. You're already living the reality. Are we living in a simulation? Not a physical simulation, but a metaphorical simulation of reality. When wise men are silenced by the establishment because they oppose the collective lie, we find ourselves in a de facto totalitarian state. So, when wise men are silenced by the establishment, that's one of the things we're doing. Pick out the wise men and women. Let's listen to what they say. And all we can do is give them a bit of a platform to reach people on, to equip people to be in possession of the facts, to use their own intellect, to use their own morality, to make their own objective, informed consent decisions about their own lives and about the lives of their family. What is wrong with that? As a former government research scientist, I feel one more principle is needed. Government decisions purportedly based on science, need to be formally reviewed by the larger scientific community and must actively seek out critical analysis. So whenever the government is saying something scientific, that should really be published as a scientific statement, and the world's scientists should be able to pile in and say, "Oi, just a minute," or say, "Oh, yeah, absolutely, mate, that's right." You know, they need to be open to scientific peer review. Just because someone is a scientific advisor for a government doesn't mean to say they should not be open to external scientific critique and peer review. No one is the science, regardless of what claims might have been made in the pandemic, for example. No one is the science. Everyone has to be subject to scientific, peer-reviewed accountability. It comes under accountability, doesn't it? You know, people need to be accountable. It's one of the principles: accountability and objectivity. And accountability to our peers is one of those. So yeah, I agree with former government research scientist. Let's open this up to complete peer review. One of the most insidious features of government science is their reliance on grey literature. In other words, not properly published literature, not properly published through the normal scientific methods. Reliance on grey literature. It could be a report from one of their mates, for example, or it could be a report from someone who's making a few bob out of the situation. Grey literature. And their ability to dismiss any quality research that disagrees with the department's preconceived beliefs. So we need to refer to proper literature. Now, of course, proper literature is potentially compromised as well. People that want to control are going to seek to control the modality of scientific literature distribution, just as the same as people sought to control the activities of the printing press back in the Middle Ages. So that's a problem. But still, if we look around, we can get good scientific information to analyse for ourselves. Difficult, but possible. But certainly don't rely on something that your mate wrote. The banality of evil, another comment. The banality of evil serves as a reminder that evil is not always dramatic or exceptional, but rather can be perpetrated by ordinary individuals who are driven by ordinary motivations. Yep. This is what C.S. Lewis talked about, wasn't it? The men in offices with shaven cheeks and clean-cut fingernails, white shirts, who could organise evil on a huge scale if they were good administrators. Yep, so ordinary motivations. So a lot of people in hideous regimes of the past, for example, were just trying to make a living for their family. That's quite possible. But that doesn't take away individual moral accountability. This was quite clear in the Nuremberg trials. Did you kill those people? Yes, I killed those people. Why did you kill those people? Well, I was just obeying orders. No, that's not acceptable. We have to take on moral, individual accountability. And again, we're seeing people compromise with powerful entities at the moment, just doing what they're told. No, it's not an excuse. You have to have personal moral accountability, I would have thought. C.S. Lewis nailed it. That said, I think Ardent. Now, this was the lady who wrote the article on Adolf Eichmann in the States in the 1963, I think it was. May have been right about Eichmann. He was probably detached in the sense he didn't consider his victims as humans, and therefore had no more compunction about killing them than we do about getting rid of an ant's nest. That doesn't excuse him, nor does it explain his deeper pathology. But it does perhaps explain part of the psychological mechanism that allowed him to do what he did. Yeah, I think there's truth in that. And of course, this is famously dealt with in the the experiments of Stanley Milgram. A lot of you are familiar with this, but Stanley Milgram couldn't understand how ordinary people could work in concentration camps. People who aren't psychopaths, just ordinary people. Some were psychopaths, of course, but a lot were just ordinary people who did the job. And what he did was he did experiments on obedience and conformity. So you'd have someone in a room flicking switches to electrocute the person in the next room who they couldn't see. And when the person in the next room who they couldn't see got something wrong, they gave him a switch. They gave him a shock, 10 volts, then 20 volts, then 30 volts, then 50 volts. And every time the person got a question wrong, they got a shock. And pretty soon they were screaming, saying, stop, let me out of here. And the person giving the shock was simply ordered, very often by a man in a white coat, no, this person's consented to the experiment, carry on, please. The authority said, carry on. The authority said, carry on. Now, of course, the person wasn't being electrocuted. They were stooges. But that's the whole point. The person being experimented on was the person, supposedly, as far as they believed, giving the shocks. Many of them laughed. Many of them cried. But their fingers kept on clicking the buttons to give bigger and bigger shocks. And there was many forms of the experiment, but in one form of the experiment, 70% of people, about 70% of people, clicked the button that said lethal shock, because they were ordered to do so. And it was easier because they couldn't see the person. Although in some of the experiments they could hear them. I think in another variety of the experiments where they're in a room where they couldn't see or hear them, a higher proportion were prepared to give that lethal shock. I think the Stanley Milgram experiments are probably the most frightening psychological experiments ever carried out. Really quite terrifying. I'm forever shaken to my core by the ease in which people were manipulated by government influences, especially the medical community, which I had assumed held a much higher standard, but was sadly educated. They were the problem. Right, so people surprised how easily the majority of people were manipulated by the government. This includes me. I was manipulated. I now feel I was manipulated. Most people simply complied and still do. If we're told there's something we're not allowed to talk about, then very often most people say, oh, not allowed to talk about that. Oh, all right then. Let's chat about the weather. You can put a long list of topics under that category of things that we're not really allowed to talk about at the moment. Not really. Things that we would have chit-chatted about openly 20 years ago. Now we can't. And if speech is controlled, it's not long till the whole person is controlled, in my view. Wow, it was pretty sobering watching you go through that list, John. I've been watching your videos since the early pandemic days. I remember how optimistic you were at first, going through all the data and trying to do your best to inform the public. Now we're here in 2025 with more power being consolidated. Yeah, more power is being consolidated. The same things seem to be happening in a variety of countries at the same time, which makes one think there's an external cause to it. By these institutions that are supposed to be upholding these very principles. The lack of accountability and transparency these days is unbelievably disappointing. They are simultaneously bringing the public closer to danger on our own tax dollars. Most of their decisions are being made tied to unelected bodies, firmly backing their own businesses or political interests. Become extremely obvious over the last 4 or 5 years, the view of one viewer. Someone else says, thank you, John. I will print out the Nolan rules and have them displayed in our boardroom with a discussion at our next meeting. Absolutely. Let's infuse these into public life. Last comment I'm going to look at. This ship has long since sailed, unfortunately. Corruption is now the standard operating procedure, not the exception, at all levels and in all branches of government. It has metastasized to every corner and become the norm. Let's hope not, but that is your view, and many of us will see elements of truth in that. So thank you very much. Now, that's basically what I want to say in this video. But I think I will talk about the. There's a lot of drone activity over New Jersey into New York, Pennsylvania, in the States that can't be explained. So I started having to think about this, and to tell you the truth, I didn't get very far. But and if you're busy, don't stick around and watch the rest of this video, because I don't have a definitive answer for you, but I do have some suggestions. Not on the causes, but on the way to proceed. So if you need to get off for work, then do. There's no great insight coming from me, unfortunately. So drone activity, is it an hallucination? And hallucinations, I do know a little bit about this. So an hallucination is a percept without an external stimulus. So an hallucination is something that you see, hear, feel, to any of the 5 senses, that is simply not there. Is it possible that these sightings are hallucinations? No, that's absurd. Of course they're not hallucinations. Now, an illusion, on the other hand, is a misrepresentation of actual events. Of course, you do this all the time. You walk in and you think there's someone in the corner of the room and you realise it's your coat on a chair. You misrepresentation of actual events. In some cases, that could be true. That could happen. In the majority, I don't think it is, but it could happen. And it will have happened in some situations. Mass hysteria is certainly possible, but I don't see why mass hysteria would lead to mass hallucinations. So I'm dismissing that one as the majority of cases. Okay, that's maybe 10% of cases or something, but it's not the majority. Mass hysteria, because people are actually seeing things and filming things, I think we can exclude mass hysteria. Although, again, a few percent of it, again, 10% could be mass hysteria. Special effects on videos, yes, some videos are fiddled, but again, that's the minority. It is very annoying when things like this happen that need to be explained and people start putting out misinformation, disinformation videos that are actually special effects and fraudulent videos. But many of them aren't special effects. So the Pentagon and the White House says nothing to see here. You're probably just seeing aeroplanes. And they also say there's no credible threat from these things. They say they won't shoot them down. But you see, the thing is, the officials are saying this, but because these drones clearly have advanced technology, as Donald Trump says, it's inconceivable that the government doesn't know about this. Now, there's times when the governments have to have to work in secret. That we all understand that. But people are getting very upset about this. So what I think we need is intermediates. So, for example, if the government needs to do something and it can't make it public, we understand that. Of course, that's sometimes necessary. But what I think they should do is have trusted intermediates. So, if they went to I don't know, if they went to my vicar or someone and says, "Look, give us your word that you're not going to say what this is about. But here's what this is about," and you can see there's no threat. So go and tell people, "Look, I know what it's about. I can't tell you what it is now. I promise not to. But the government's told me what it's about. It's something that needs to be done. But hey, there is no threat. The government's correct." If we had someone like that, so the governments could go through trusted intermediaries. So there are honest men in the United States who this could be done by. And by the way, this isn't just the United States. There's drone activity in the United Kingdom. My government said nothing. Russia and China, there seems to be drone activity. It seems like drone capacity is ramping up around the world with high-tech modern equipment. But to put the public at rest, all the government needs to do, I think, is tell someone, say, look, you can't tell them why, but just tell them we know what it is and it's okay, and they can chill out, and maybe next year we'll be able to tell them, or maybe we'll never be able to tell them, or if it's a matter of national security, but just tell people that. They're not stupid. People will accept that, I'm sure. So anyway, these are real sightings. People are concerned, and that is real. So the sightings are real and the concern is real. The government needs to tell people why there's no credible threat. Not even if they can't tell people why there's no credible threat, tell a few trusted individuals that there's no credible threat, explain why, and then those individuals can tell us. And there's people, of course, that we trust. So people say to me, look, John, I can't tell you what this is for now, but trust me, it's okay. I'll say, you know what? Your word's good enough for me. I'll accept that. From the right man or woman, I would accept that. That's what we need. We need these credible intermediates, I feel. There's lots of different forms of drones, so this is not a single phenomenon, I don't think. There's some make a noise, some don't make a noise. It's all kind of strange. There's certainly unknowns here. But the idea, as Donald Trump says, Mr. Trump says, future President Trump says, the idea that the government doesn't know is unconscionable, really. Evidence of advanced technology. Local governments don't know. Federal government surely must know. And that's the link where Mr. Trump says it's inconceivable, basically. He says that it's something like the central government doesn't know. I don't think so, is what he said. So I think the thing is, people are a bit unnerved now, and we're very wary of anything that could be used to manipulate us again. I don't want to be manipulated. I want to be given information to make objective decisions in my own life, really. And that is what is currently lacking. But for now, let's pick trusted intermediates that will say, look, the boss of the Pentagon or the president's told me this. I can't tell you what it is, but hey, it's okay. Go home. Don't worry about it. You and your family are safe. You and your family are safe. That's where we're at. So quite a few people watching now, which is good. These live streams are just an experiment. Yeah, we will look at some of these comments and go through some of them, but yeah, that's us now on the second screen. You said men, John, don't leave out women. I'm sorry I never said that. I always try and say men and women. we are equal. Anyway, yeah, if I've said men, I meant men and women. My sincere apologies. Right, I think we'll leave that there for now. That's just a few thoughts. Let's hold our politicians accountable. They should be selfless, not politicians or people in public office. Selfless, have integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. So that's my second. Well, no, we did some live streams actually a while back, but that's the second experiment. I was actually setting this up with my technician last time, and we went online inadvertently. So there was actually people watching, and it was me and my techie having a sort of chit chat about what buttons you click, because I'm not as smart as I look. Trust me, I only memorise what buttons to click. I don't actually know how this tech works. So fortunately, I don't think I ever said anything too inappropriate. But anyway, it was actually quite funny. But for now, thank you for watching, and we'll leave this live stream here. And if it works, we'll certainly do another one. It actually feels good to talk directly. So for now, thank you very much for watching.